top of the morning to you. This is Kellen Cash, and today's special guest. Get ready and get the kids away from the radio. It's still Christian radio, but we're going to touch on a subject. When your husband is addicted to pornography. I have Miss VICKI TIEDE here, and this is her book, and she's going to tell us all about it. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thanks so much for having me.
I had to have you with a title like this and a testimony, which means you've been through a test. Please tell us about your book and what made you write this.
Absolutely. Well, obviously you're right. This is my story. Mm-hmm. It's based from my first marriage. Mm-hmm. And I was a young newlywed and had high aspirations for my marriage dreams, like I think any other couple has when they're getting married.
Yes.
But it wasn't very far into the marriage before I recognized that things weren't right. And I was finding my husband on the computer at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Doing work, right?
Yeah, doing lots of things, but never actually what it was. And you know what? He never came to me and confessed and said, this is a problem I'm having. Mm-hmm. It was always me catching him and pulling him off and crying in bed alone. And when I was 3 months pregnant, mm-hmm. his addiction had escalated until there was a clandestine trip and secret post office box and wow. a variety of things. And I think God gives you those opportunities of pain to expand your capacity for more of God. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to turn that around and use it for good. And it's important that people know that there's hope, that marriages don't have to end.
Okay. So were you able to keep yours together?
Mine did not end well because he never did take responsibility. And he never saw a problem with what was happening, and the behavior did escalate. And that can happen and often does. And so in my situation, we got to a point where it was not a safe place to be, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And my pastor and Christian therapist said, we're with you no matter what you decide to do here, but you are in a dangerous zone here, and you probably need to get out of this marriage.
What were the first signs that you were able to even know something was wrong?
That something was wrong? Honestly, it was a lack of intimacy. And people don't think that. I think people often think that if their husband's addicted to pornography, that they're going to be doing a lot more things. But what happens is that that physical need is being met somewhere else, and it expands their desire for more pornography and less actual intimacy, which, makes sense. God has a design for marriage and what sexuality is supposed to look like, and if you're replacing it with an evil substitute, the two don't equate. And so just like a drug, you start to crave more of that pornography in this case.
Now I can hear a man right now saying, hey, I watch it, but I'm not addicted. Describe or explain the difference, or if there is a difference in what your study has found on men who even just watch it. Because if you open up the gate to the devil, it's... Absolutely. And you're exactly right. A lot of people say, this doesn't affect me, and it certainly doesn't affect anyone else. It's a choice I'm making for myself. It's a victimless decision on my part, which is completely wrong. But it is an addiction if it's something that you can't stop thinking about, that you're drawn back to. I think there are men who may happen upon pornography and see it once and say, let me check this out, and realize the sin in it and repent of that and never choose to look and seek it out again. But as soon as you start seeking it out and it starts to interrupt your daily life, I was just reading that there are men who can spend sometimes up to 5 hours a day looking at pornography, and 30% of men who are addicted to pornography or dabbling in it lose their jobs. Really?
Because that temptation gets to the point where they're looking at it at work. And that kind of thing is often monitored. And I've talked to so many wives whose husbands were attorneys or city planners or worked for the government and have since lost their jobs and can't get work. One of the attorneys is now a custodian.
Wow. Talk about a loss of purpose. From JD to custodian because of pornography. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
So why even risk it?
I know. I mean, that's exactly right. So for me, you asked earlier what were the flags. One was this intimacy thing, but I think also another frequent flag is when you go to your computer. If the history is wiped off every time you're going to the computer,
Yes.
There's a reason for that.
Yes.
And you need to explore. And where is the computer? If it's behind a closed door, and as soon as you walk in, they're flipping it off or they're shutting off the monitor. Hello, you need to ask some questions.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't want the answer, so we choose to put on blinders.
And there's some men right now saying, please don't mess up my format. I have it perfect set up in my house. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
And pornography shrouded in lies, because especially, so the statistics you see frequently are that 50 to 70% of Christian men are struggling with this issue.
Wow.
Okay, so inherently, God willing, the Holy Spirit's at work in their heart, and they know this isn't right, and so the tendency is to lie and to try to be very secretive about this, and they don't want their wife to know. And so, lies eventually will catch up with you. And I tell men all the time, if this is a struggle for you, tell your wife. Do not wait for her to find out. Do not wait for her to walk in on you or to discover this big history on the computer. Tell her, because otherwise she's always going to wonder if you're really sorry or if you're just sorry you got caught.
Wow. Well, and you say tell your wife. What about those men who are trying to walk their walk and their wives say, no, you're not getting any from me, so go handle it yourself? And can you tell the women the repercussions and what can come about that if you're giving your man permission to go satisfy himself? Because that's a very big thing in the body.
It is. It absolutely is. And okay, so there's kind of two hands to this here. On the one hand, Scripture is very clear about your responsibility in the bedroom, and that that you are now one and you need to share intimacy with each other. And so using that as a manipulative tool is across the board wrong. Okay? That it is. Let me say this, though. Even if, for some reason, she has chosen not to be intimate with you, it is not a free pass to do pornography. It is not. In the end, you're only responsible for your own choices. Yeah. And if you choose to go the route of pornography, you cannot point the finger back at your wife and say, well, honey, you didn't do what I needed you to do. And so it doesn't work like that. You still are responsible for your behavior and choices.
Okay. And what about for the wives who say, no, he can go do that because I don't want to deal with him right now.
Well, why don't you just drop your husband in a shark-infested pool of water? That's really what you're doing. Because I think people do not understand how inherently evil pornography is and how it will become all-consuming. And once those images go in, they never go out. They are there all the time. And you're then a partner in corrupting your marriage bed, which, again, goes specifically directly against God's Word.
Gotcha.
So, you need to be careful that you aren't having material around the house that is suggestive or pointing in that direction. You can set up an environment of health when it comes to sexual purity.
Has any of the research shown, or in your personal life, when they are addicted to pornography, when they do want to be intimate, they come in and they want to do some perverse things that they saw in a movie, someone who's getting paid,
right,
$1,000+ whatever dollars.
Right. I think that happens. And I didn't do significant research in those sorts of things. I do think that it happens. But the more frequent response is lack of intimacy at all. And so I think that's even more common. And really, I focus in the book on healing her heart. So it's not in any way a fix-it manual. How do you help your husband overcome this? Here's how you can understand the addiction. That is not the aim of this. Because here's the deal. I've had so many women tell me, you know what, my husband did stop looking at porn years ago. He's in an accountability group. He has filters. He talks to me about it. He's doing everything by the book. And I still don't want him to touch me. And I still feel dirty. And though he's giving me no reason, I still don't trust him. And it's because she's experienced a significant loss, a betrayal, a loss of trust, and fears that have been invited in for a lot of reasons. Is there going to be disease? Is there going to be, a loss of job, and it's going to change our financial status? Is this going to hurt our reputation? I mean, this just goes on and on. There's anger, there's shame, there's this idea that I'm not okay.
Yes.
If he's choosing pornography, that means there's something wrong with me. I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not competent, I'm not available enough. And so she has all this shame.
And what about, is there a, it starts with pornography and then it goes to something else. Now he's going to the massage parlor.
Yeah.
Now he's going, have you seen a correlation?
Absolutely. In fact, there's 4 levels of sex addiction, and I'll describe those for you. The first, level 1, is, it's just straight pornography. It's visual types of things. So it can be things on the computer. It can be, TV, video type things. And then level 2 is when it starts to get a little bit physical. You're going to massage parlors and that sort of thing. And then it moves into criminal behavior, like voyeurism, exhibitionism, phone sex, inappropriate touching, prostitution. That's level 3. And then level 4 is violent, illegal. So that's where you get into, sexual assault and rape and child molestation issues. And so here's the thing. I really wanted women to know that this book is focused on level 1. It's primarily focusing on visual pornography. However, I interviewed 25 women for the book. And I was astounded that a quarter of them, their husbands had escalated to level 4 sexual addiction.
Wow.
Violent criminal behavior. A quarter of them. Now, is that scientific? No. I mean, I talked to 25 women. However, I was astounded by that.
Yeah.
And I think it may be somewhat representative that there is going to be an escalation in that behavior.
And when it's scientific, it's going to be more a problem. We're going to say, hey, police, come on through. So, no, that's a great warning that it's not just a harmless, I'm just going to go and let them do that. Because, wow. Now, and you said 50% of men in church?
Yeah, 50 to 70%. I mean, it was years ago, I think like in the 1990s, that the Promise Keepers had an event, and they asked, when was the last time you looked at pornography, or what was that frequency like? And it was 50% then.
Wow.
And now the new numbers that I see coming out of a number of bigger ministries, even like Covenant Eyes and such, is 70%. It's significant. It's too much.
Those are the folks who sit in the way back of the church. Those can't be the folks who are serving, calling themselves disciples. Can it?
Yeah. I wish. I wish it was nobody in the church.
Yeah.
However, no. You know what? It's our pastors. It can be our elders. It can be our worship leaders. And, and so if you think that there's little talk about this in the church in general, I mean, we're feeling freer to talk about pornography in the church, about the men.
Yeah.
We fail to remember that there's almost always a woman behind that man who's been betrayed, and pastors don't know what to do with her. There's not a pastor in this country not dealing with this issue, and they have couples coming in or men coming in. They don't know what to say to these women. So if there's silence in general in the Christian community, it's even more silent for those who are ministry leaders, because their job is on the line.
Yeah.
But there are a number of denominations who are addressing this and really trying to come alongside their pastors and putting in filtering systems and software that helps protect them at work.
Yeah.
But it's a problem across the board.
What advice would you give women? Because you can listen to the World Talk Radio, and people, Dr. Ruth can say, hey, it's healthy for couples to watch pornography to spice up their life. And that's not a direct quote at all, but there's so many folks out there, and you're not of the world, but you're in it. And so what can they do? Do you have any suggestion on spicing up your life without pornography, or helping women before it gets to that addictive part?
Right. Wow. Well, I'm not an expert in that area specifically, but I will tell you that if you have a strong, solid, growing relationship with Jesus Christ. And your husband does too, and you are working on that. I in the book I even give an example of a triangle, and God is the top point of that triangle, and you and your husband are the other corners. And as you draw closer to God, you also draw closer to each other. And I think that's significant. And having purity and following God's design for sexuality and intimacy adds its own spice. I mean, God is no prude. And you
can read Song of Songs.
That's right. Hello. Yes, there are many things. But he is no prude, and he had a design that's meant to be spectacular and perfect, and it can be, but you have to follow his blueprint.
Wow. I'm good. Get this book, When Your Husband is Addicted to Pornography, Healing Your Wounded Heart. Where can they purchase this?
You know what? You can get this really from any local bookstore. They are able to get it. It's published by New Growth Press, so you can get it there. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of your online sources too, but I love to encourage people to go to their local Christian bookstore and ask for it.
God bless you. I think this is great. I have to read this. It's not on MP3, so you have to read. For those, is the audio book out? Is it?
Well, I will tell you too, though. You know what? I've had a number of men read this book, and it's specifically written for the woman. You will get a little estrogen rush if you're a man reading it. I'm sorry, you've been warned. But I've had a number of men. I had one gentleman from Canada contact me and say if I'd read this 4 years ago, I'd still be married.
Wow.
And pastors and counselors, this is the kind of book you need to have on your shelf, so that when that couple comes in and you're counseling the husband and you have all these resources, you also have something to hand to her.
Wow. And I'm sure you'll speak at anybody's church.
I will.
Group. This might be a little racy, but even youth groups. Why not catch them? That's really when it starts for
without
men.
question.
And so, no, that is awesome, Miss Vicki. When Your Husband is Addicted to Pornography, please get the book. It has been a pleasure, and I hope to hear more from you.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.